All right. Welcome to the last session of this morning. Thanks to the wizardry of Zoom, we're very happy to have with us for the first talk, Salomon Kroonenberg, who is at Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands, and also Anton University of Suriname. And he'll be speaking to us today about Friedrich Voltz, discoverer of the Maroonian greenstone belt of the Guiana Shield. So, over to you, Salomon.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, all right. Well, Friedrich Voltz, there are several people called Voltz. You have a paleontologist in Strasbourg, Philippe Voltz. You have a landscape painter, auch Friedrich Voltz, who was mainly painting cows. But this is Friedrich Voltz, who has not made it so far into the geological literature. And that is because although he did a lot of research, he died on yellow fever before he could make his report of his book in Paramaribo. So I have no portrait of him. You see, I was only 27 when he died, but he has done an enormous amount of work, and my talk is specifically meant to give credit to all the work that he did. He was the first geological explorer in Suriname. So that's what we are going. This mountain is called after him, Volksberg. I will speak later why he got this name and how this was. This is the only thing why he is known in Suriname, just because of this mountain, because it's the popular tourist attraction. So, what is a greenstone belt? Well, that is also what. Where's the next one? Yes, a greenstone belt. That is a series of mainly mafic volcanic rocks with some sedimentary rocks as well. This is the northern part of the Guiana Shield along the Atlantic Ocean. Here below is the Amazon basin. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but anyway, the text is there. Okay, this is a cursor, huh? This is a cursor. That should do it. Yes. Okay. Oh no, that's a pen. Sorry. That should even. I don't need that. Okay. Laser pointer. That's it. There is it. So here, this is the greenstone belt. It's still this. Not geen pen. Sorry. This is an important series of rocks which are very typical and very well known also from Southern Africa. Because these are the areas where usually most of the gold mines occur. And if you put the continents back into a pre-drift situation, then you see that the greenstone belt from the Guiana Shield just continues into Western Africa. All those red spots you see there, they're gold mines. And so in West Africa, there's the gold mines in the greenstone belt and also in the Guiana Shield. It is actually the result of one big period of mountain building about 2 billion years ago, which is very similar from one side of the Atlantic Ocean to the other. So that is just to say what what I mean by a greenstone belt. Oh, come on. Just a moment. So this is a geological map of Suriname. Here, this is what we now call the greenstone belt. It continues also to the west. So we know more or less that the greenstone belt forms an area in the country between with a more or less east-west situation going southwest. It continues into French Guiana. French Guiana, La Guyane, is almost only greenstone belt. This is a recent book on the geology of Suriname, so that you can get an idea of what is there. Now, Friedrich Voltz, he was born in 1828 in the town of Biedenkop. This is his birth certificate. September 9, he was baptized. This is very difficult to read because all those documents are in the German Kurrentschrift. I have found somebody in Leiden University at Naturalis who could read it, otherwise I could not do anything with it. This is an almost contemporaneous picture of the factory, the iron forgery, in which his father worked. He was administrator of an iron smelter. This was the Laandeel, very famous area with all kinds of iron mine, and so he had an interest in mining himself as well. But we have, of course, I have nothing to show what man looked like and so on. It's a pity, but that's all we have more or less. Now it still exists. It is the iron factory Buderus in Germany is still there at the same place, so it has always kept more or less the same function. Now, Voltz first followed geology lectures in Taliter, near a copper mine, and then in Gießen and later in Mainz. And on 24th age, he already wrote a paper on the geological conditions in the Duke of Hessen in central Germany and so on. This is his PhD thesis, which he defended in Mainz, and he was very much revered by a lot of German scientists. Leopold von Buch listened to his lectures, and he had a very good press reputation in those areas. Now, that was the moment, 1853, when the Dutch government wanted to have to investigate the possibilities to have German settlers in Suriname. The country was completely covered with the tropical rainforest, even is at present, and so there's plenty of space. Sorry, I apologize for all the inconvenience that I gave you by getting COVID while we were on the excursion. I hope nobody else got it. You can tell me later. Well, the Dutch government wanted to investigate, is Suriname a good place? And Germans are working very hard and they are good laborers, and so maybe we can make a German colony. And so they didn't have much success with the Dutch colonists who died very quickly. So they contacted the Kingdom of Württemberg. That was because the daughter of the King of Württemberg, King William I, was married to the Dutch King William III, so they have a very close relationship. So they came to Stuttgart, and there are several documents in the Landesarchiv Baden-Württemberg which describe how they looked for good scientists to make an expedition in the interior of Suriname to find out whether this was a good place for German settlers and so. The commission consisted of 4 people. Friedrich Duttenhofer, a veterinary, he was already in his 40s. Hermann Schunk, an agronomist. Noack, have no first name, he was the secretary, and Friedrich Voltz, and so. It was really a dysfunctional team, as we can learn from the letters that Voltz wrote to his Dutch geology friends. We'll see that in a minute. Duttenhofer was often drunk, he said. Schunk was lazy, he didn't want to go in the interior, only close to the coast. Noack went there only for the money, and he felt him as the only one who was really interested in geology. So before he went to Suriname, he visited the Netherlands and had got acquaintance with Winand Staring. He was the top geologist at that moment. He was in charge of the geological map of the Netherlands, with a lot of problems also there. Jacob van Breda, he was the director of Tylers Museum. Lydie Toura knows everything about that. She worked there. All those names you can find in the cartouche in the audience, in the conference room of Tylers Museum. This is Herman Schlegel, director of the Royal Natural History Museum. And he was specifically in contact with Staring, and he promised that he would write all his observations to Staring and to let him know what kind of things he had found in the meantime. Less and less people were with him, but he made trips all along all the rivers of Suriname. We see he went up the Suriname River here, he went up the Saramacca River, the Kopenama River, the Nikeri River, the Corantijn. He didn't go further than this point. He wanted to find the sources, but he didn't succeed. We will see a little bit how this is, why this is. He also went to French Guiana and wrote some funny things about the nunneries in Mana. This is all in Dutch and in German, but and he made nice observations also in the towns of Guyana. So it just gives a good image of the time in which he was living. Now he had a good friend in Germany, and that was Fridolin Zandberger. We have a portrait from him at least, and he wrote when he died an obituary in the Darmstadt paper, so that we know his earliest history because it's nowhere else. And apparently Voltz wrote already shortly after being arrived in Suriname a letter to Zandberger and told him that he would send samples and so. And Staring was very angry when he read this in the Jahrbuch from that time, because he had promised that only data and samples would go to the Netherlands. So it has taken a lot of time before the quarrel that they had because of that had been solved. And Fridolin Zandberger had still another function because Voltz did not only want to write his geological observation, but he also wrote more personal observations on the landscape and on the people in the journal Die Natuur. And nobody in the Netherlands had ever seen that, and Staring also didn't know that. But there were very interesting data that he told there, very interesting to see what he was doing. Of course, he wrote to Staring. This is the kind of letters in German, but not in Kurrentschrift, because he supposed that it was difficult for Staring to read it on very thin paper. I had to use 400 times the magnification sometimes to read what he had written, but I came out after all. This is just an envelope in which he sent also a letter. The letters also took very long because he started on October 1st, but the letter arrived only the next year because also in the field, Voltz became ill. And so he could not finish this letter, and Staring heard it only 1 year later, got the letter that he wrote. So Staring published part of the data that Voltz wrote in the journals of the middle of the 19th century, Algemene Konst en Letterboden. And which are nice observations, but it is just the geological observations. And when you read those letters, you see there is much more in it. You see that he complains about the authorities who didn't give him the instruments he wanted to have, and they did not do everything directly as he wanted. He was an ambitious young man who just wanted to work, and so he had not much patience to understand how things went in Suriname. So therefore, in the beginning, he was seen as arrogant and intrusive and so on. And that's also that you cannot see that from what Staring published. But when I was translating his letter, it was clear there was much more personal observation there than just the geology. So he made various trips. I told that already. First he was along the coast, and he collected shells there, and later this collection of shells is now in Naturalis, in the Natural History Museum in the Netherlands, in Leiden. And the specialist said he had a good idea about what species, or at least what genus they could be. This one was named after him also. But he also found shells further inland. in concretions of shells. And it's very interesting because he said, well, here are what you find in the present coast. It is the same kind of shells that you find further inland. So these are the sand ridges, the shell ridges in the coastal area of Suriname. And he said, he wrote, this is one of the few drawings in his letters. And you see there's zand and musselen, zand, mussel. So tone, clay, so he made some profiles there. And he said, well, if I find the same shells in the sand ridges further inland as I find on the coast, it means that the land is being uplifted, and which made the shore prograde further seaward and so on. So that was a good geological reasoning. I had never been in this kind of environment. We know, of course, now that is not the right explanation, because all those sediments are coming from the Amazon, from the Guiana stream, and there have been phases of more and less sedimentation. So it is an older coastline at the moment when the Amazon mud was what less important. But anyway, I loved the way in which he, with his little experience, really tried to make an explanation of the things he saw. He also collected a lot of plants. They are also in Naturalis about 20 species, and he was very well acquainted of what it was. He had read a lot of literature before he went, so many plants he could more or less bring, give a name. So this is just a small selection of what he collected. If you see this, and you know that he, for instance, he also exhumed skeletons of Amerindian people in the coastal area, which have disappeared. I don't know where they are, but anyway, he was a very interested generalist to see all what I was. He could have been the Humboldt of Suriname hadn't he died prematurely. So this is one of his part of his plant collection. Now is the question, how did they travel in the interior? Because of course no outboard motors. They had so-called tent boats, which was being rowed by usually the Creole people, so black people who were hired to row them further upstream. And Voltz and his colleagues were sitting inside the tent to protect them against the sun. So this was the normal way. They had also to take account of the tides, which sometimes they had to row against the tide. And they always tried to make use of the tide. Further inland, they didn't have the problem anymore. But this is only the travel in the coastal area. In the interior, it is much more difficult because all the rivers there, they have enormous amount of cataracts, hard stone outcrops, but they are several meters high, and Voltz describes them with very much detail how difficult this was. This was not, of course, from his time, because this is from the 91 expedition. I could give this the recent ones. So I myself worked in the rainforest for 6 years in the 70s. So I'm very much familiar with this transportation, but they had to tow the boats across the cataracts to get further, and sometimes it was very hard work. And so, but of course those are the places where you see outcrops, and for the rest in the rainforest there is not much outcrop. That's what you see. Well, in his travels, he was not alone with his German colleagues, but this man, Christopher Roosevelt, who later became a famous cartographer in Suriname, also wrote an account of the trips that they had. And they had some difficult experiences because, as I told you, they wanted to reach the sources of the Suriname River, but they couldn't, because in the interior there are a lot of tribes of black people, Maroons, who fled the plantations and built their own newly formed tribes in the interior. And so they were very much suspicious when white people come in. They thought that they might be trying to colonize them again. They had a free life. They once signed an agreement with the Dutch government that they would be left in peace. The Dutch have often tried to conquer them, but they were strong, and the Dutchmen, the Dutch soldiers, drowned in the swamps. So they have played an important role, and they are still there. They are one of the best workers they have. Sometimes it's also indigenous Amerindian workers which he used, but this was the place where their expedition in the Suriname River stopped because he was not allowed to go there, and so. And what they said, oh, you come back over in half a year, then it's dry time and it's easier, and so all kinds of pretext. But they couldn't get it, and of course Voltz couldn't follow all the conversations, but this man was already for a long time there, and he describes exactly how they tried to get further, and Voltz is almost silent about this episode. This was his first disappointment, and later exactly the same thing happened also when he went along the Saramacca River, a little bit another way, because they were offended langs the Saramacca River, because Schunk, so the agronomer, wanted to see to cut in two a rock, which was a sacred rock for them, just a small rock, but he wanted to see what was there, what kind of rock it was. And he was warned by the local people, don't cut this rock, and he did it. And so they were not allowed to go further. And so he had that little feeling for the pride and the traditions of the indigenous and the Maroon people who lived in the interior. So this is the account of this episode in the Suriname River. Now, what did he collect? About 1,000 rock samples. This is Naturalis, the National Biodiversity Center in Leiden. So this whole rack is full of rocks which were collected by Voltz. So you can see it here. It says also Voltz collected by him. So he had sent all those rocks already in advance before his return to the Netherlands, or failing to return. So we have an enormous amount of rock samples from the whole northern part of Suriname, which is exceptional. And so he had a good idea also for what kind of rocks they were, and so. He had his own name, and some of them were also. This is still his own label on a quartz porphyry and antophyllite rock here. We now know what it is because he lived in a time when there were no thin sections yet. Henry Sorby had just started doing this. This is a diabase. I think I went too quick. I have to go back just one. So because you have a granite here, garnet schist. This is a nice, which you might call granulite Jacques. And he liked this rock very much because it was a laterite with a lot of iron, and he thought of his father who was working in the iron mines in the iron forgery in foundry in Germany. So he made that all kinds of visions about the new iron found in Suriname. We know now that they have only 30% of iron and they are not rich enough to do anything. This was a white clay he found, and Richard Schomburg, who had traveled along the rivers of Guyana, British Guyana, thought that it was chalk, but it is just clay. And this is also interesting. So what did he see? This is also, he writes something about the greenstones. So he says, just above Vidra, town on the Suriname River, the formation changes and greenstones crop out along the riverbank instead of granite. They have a large distribution as they form a zone of up till now unknown length, but with a width from here to the mouth of the Sara Creek. Schomburg found greenstone on similar geographic latitude in British Guyana, and it is not improbable that this formation can be extrapolated through the whole of Guyana. So that is actually the moment that he discovers these greenstone belts, which I, in the beginning, have illustrated. So now this is what he called greenstone. It is quite different. This is a quartz porphyry, antophyllite rock. I said just the dolerite is a storolite schist, which he thought that it was epidote, but never mind. This is a hypersteam gabbro. He said it's also granulite. So all those rocks he called greenstone. At present, we don't call any rock greenstone anymore. But still, the concept of the greenstone belt is still very much used everywhere in the world, in the Abitibi belt in Canada, the Barberton belt in South Africa, and here the Maroon belt in the Guiana Shield. So that's what he saw. This is another example of the rocks he saw. Thinly schistose clay schist, never seen before in Suriname, couldn't find any fossils, seems to resemble formations in the Brazilian province of Maranhão, where recently large gold deposits were found. Now this is 1855 and gold was discovered along the Maroon River where it was taken, but only in 1874. So he had already an idea this could be an area with gold, and without having found it himself, he was still prescient and saw the possibility of these of gold occurrences in the area. Then yeah, he traveled along the Kopenhagen with his Amerindian rowers at that time. And he said, and suddenly I got a view of a mountain only a few hours from here. From that projected to a fairly high mountain with the shape of a cone, truncated at 2/3 of its height. It may have been 800 to 1,000 feet high. It's a little bit too much. It was mostly covered with forest, but at its northwestern side, there was a large glistening white area, which the Indians probably rightly thought to be a savanna. So that is the rock, the mountain we saw in the beginning of my talk. It's the first time it was seen by anybody. Of course, the Amerindians themselves had seen it long before, but it was the first time that it was described. Well, so he had seen quite a lot of things and had written 5 letters to Staring, maybe 70 sheets in his handwriting. But on the moment that he was supposed to return to Europe after 2 years in the interior, he died of yellow fever in Paramaribo in the capital. And so that is actually why nobody knows him, because he except from those letters, he has no publications on at all on Suriname, and it's thanks to Martin, we know a few of the data that he has published, but not all the data that he has writes about personal things and the freedom he felt when he could be alone in the field with the Amerindians, and that's the moment that when he didn't have to go anymore with his companies. He went alone with the Amerindians and went farther than any of them, and then he felt happy, and he was very much. At that moment, he was very much honored and liked by the people, because he did it all by himself. He knew how to travel in the rainforest and so. But he died of yellow fever August 6, a week before his 28th birthday. This is a description of his estate as it was found in Suriname. A tin box with field notes, maps, drawings, documents, letters, books, money, etc., but all got lost. Duttenhofer had already returned before, and Noax had also returned before, because he thought that he could get more money from the Netherlands if he already said that he was preparing a settlement for the Germans, and so only Schunk was there when he died. When he was precisely there is not very clear. But the agreement with the Dutch government, of course, was that there would be an account, a travel account with all the things they had found. And the point is, and it illustrates the kind of people with which Voltz had to travel, that they never made a final report of their work. The Duttenhofer wrote one in the same Kurrentschrift, but for King William I, his own king from Württemberg. And he wrote also a few papers in Das Ausland, in another contemporaneous journal, and so he got a gold medal for all that he did. But the Dutch government didn't get anything, and they stayed a long time in The Hague to get to write the report, and they get an allowance in The Hague to get to write that report. And they all the time they asked for more time and more. and more money. And so, but after all, they said we are going to Germany and we will make it the report in Germany. And nothing came of that. The Dutenhofer died in 1859, and Junk disappeared. And after I had finished the book, I found that he had still given some lectures in Gießen on Suriname in 1857. And but what happened to the data? Later he was employed by the German nobility family to Sein Wittgenstein in Romania. But I haven't gone there. I don't think this tin box can be found there. So there's should have been a lot of material which is additional to all what we know from the letters, but so far this has probably gone lost. Well, 30 years later, then came Professor Karl Martin. He was actually went to the Netherlands to study heretics, but he stayed there and became a professor of geology in Leiden. And he also read the letters by Voltz and wrote some details about it, but also only the geological details. But he said, well, he made the first geological map of Suriname. He had been to Suriname only along the Suriname River. This is the part he knew. But he drew the whole greenstone belt on the map of Suriname, and it says diabase and greenstone in the sense of Voltz. And he is the one who also knew about the Voltzberg and named this mountain after him, and still this name is being used in Suriname. It is very popular, but nobody really knows who Voltz was. And my idea was to give to reestablish this man. This is the book that I wrote about it in Dutch, of course, for the Surinamese audience, and so. And so I hope that he will get the credit for all the work he did in geology. Some people give him another type of credit. That is my last slide. The Surinamese alcohol factory made a kind of vodka. Maybe Suriname is not the typical country for vodka, but they nominated the vodka Voltz without knowing who he was, but the silhouette of the mountain is on the bottle. So if you go to Suriname, drink Voltz, I would say it's difficult to get anyway because people don't drink vodka there. So that's my talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Salomon. A very interesting account of the hardships involved in doing field work. Fortunately, Ram didn't make it to his 28th birthday. So with that, are there any questions that you have for Salomon?
Okay, thank you, Sal. Good that you could make your talk despite this difficult condition. You know, what I would just make a quick mention that, of course, this Voltz is nothing to do with another Voltz who was more French, you know, working in the Vosges, and we gave his name to a fossil, the Grea volzia, you know. But my question here would be, do you know if Friedrich Voltz had any contact with French Guiana?
No geological ones, but in his last letters, which were not sent to Staring, which is just just a draft. He is a bit cynical about the nunnery in Mana, and says also, well, I would have to look at the details, but he thought that the Catholic, he apparently didn't like Catholic. He was Lutheran himself. We will surely want to take all the material from all the geological treasures to Rome, something like that he wrote. I have to look it up. I'll let you know anyway what it is. It is funny. So he really, well, is a bit sarcastic about this trip. So, but well, so it is not geology. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, and recover quickly in your hotel. You know.
Is there, may I know, is there anybody that I have that has contracted the COVID? Because you all have been tested, huh?
We've not been tested
not yet.
Not yet. Okay, I thought you would do it in the coffee break. Okay, let me know, because I feel very uncomfortable, very unhappy. Of course, I didn't know that it was it, but I really wanted that. I really hope that you will. Nobody of you will have been contacted close enough with me to get this. Yeah.
Well, we all wish you well. Oh, we have a question.
Thank you, Salomon. It's Sharad Master here. I wanted to know if those samples that Voltz had sent back, which are now in Leiden, have they been described or worked on, and especially has any geochronology been done on any of those samples?
Well, we were at a certain moment we were interested in the ultramafic rock, so the antophyllite rock, which I showed. We have been looking at the details of the amphiboles and that, but there is a lot of Harry Priem has been working a lot in the 70s with rubidium strontium. We are now in a project in which we have a lot of uranium lead datings from the interior, not specifically from Voltz samples. But well, of course, we don't have Voltz maps, so we don't know exactly where he sampled, and that's if we would have the maps, then it would have been easier. But also IJzerman, he was wrote a thesis about all the rocks that had been collected in expeditions in his thesis in 1931. He has seen. He has also done the petrography of all his work, and so we know we have quite a good idea about the geochronology, and we are now working together with the University of West Australia in the framework of a project with gold companies to get still more detail up to lutetium, hafnium of zircons and that kind of things. So we are really well up to date, but Voltz samples, because we do not know exactly where they come from, have not been studied for geochronology, only for petrography.
Thank you, Salomon, for your presentation. My question is about the outcrops.
Yeah.
The first photo you show in your presentation, I think it's called an Inselberg.
Yeah, sure.
It's an Inselberg.
Yeah.
And there are some Inselbergs in Brasilia too.
Yeah.
My question is if Voltz was able to explain how it forms.
No, because he was traveling along the river and he has not climbed it. He saw it from afar, and when you travel along the Kopenhagen, you see it. I have done it myself, but he has not been there. No, he didn't. He didn't understand what it was at that moment. I have a very nice video taken by a drone of how it looks at this moment, but it's a bit heavy. It is 200,000 megabyte, so it's too big to show to you in this way. I would have preferred to give it to you to show it at the start of my talk, but somehow it didn't work out. Still can try to get it, but it is too heavy, I think.
Salomon, thank you very much.